Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough indeed to be doing it too, welcome back to channel. Do not adjust your televisual sets. Today we're going to be running through the Progetto M46, what's the full special name? The Progetto M35 Mod.46 Tier 8 Premium Tank for the Pan-European line, where all your Pan-European dreams come true. This is the tank that transcends Brexit. Let's have a political argument when we're talking about tanks. Stick around, because I'm going to tell you why I like this tank so much, where it falls in relation to the P44 Pantera that is the Tech Tree Tier 8 Premium Medium, why I think Wargaming actually got this one right, and lots and lots of little odds and sods about what's going on in the world right now. Now, the thing I like a lot about this tank is that it's just a variation on a theme to the Tech Tree tank. And if you look at the raw numbers on it, there's not a lot that screams out that it is actually better than the Tech Tree tank, which is something that we've come to expect for a lot of these medium tanks, or a lot of these Tier 8 premium tanks, that they are in fact just improvements upon the Tech Tree tank, and you can buy that improvement and that power creep, and we don't love that. We call that wallet worrying, and I don't particularly oppose it, but that's a philosophical debate for another YouTube channel and time. But what they've done is they've taken the P44 and the Pantera and just adjusted a few things on it so that it does have a different feel and play style to this tank, despite the fact that I think the raw numbers suggest that this tank is probably a little bit inferior. There are a couple of things I prefer about this tank, and I was surprised when I started running it. I didn't have any huge games in it. And look, the armor's a lock. It's no real difference. They're both crap armor-wise. That's the Pantera. That's the Progetto M46. That's the Pantera. They're both rubbish. Like, you're going to get pent. There's nothing spectacular about the armor. The two main differences where the Progetto beats the Pantera for me are alpha and the shell reload time. Now, there is also a extra degree of gun depression here, and that is certainly helpful. 9 degrees versus 8 degrees is a real thing, and obviously I prefer tanks with more gun depression. So straight out of the bat, that's a winner. But the Pantera is faster. It has more damage per minute as a pure number, and it's got more penetration on its AP rounds. In fact, it's got considerably more penetration. 203 millimeters of AP pen versus 180 millimeters of AP pen on this little beauty. And they've got the same exact penetration numbers on their APCR, 259 millimeters of APCR pen. And because obviously you're running an APCR tank, you are probably not going to take the calibrated shells, which improves your penetration numbers, because that only gives a 5% bonus to AP and APCR, whereas you get a whopping big 10% bonus to heat when you do that, which is much nicer. Where the hell was I? So the raw numbers there definitely favour the Pantera. What I love about this is the 240 alpha and the 2.5 second reload time. The Pantera's reload time is 3 seconds, and I struggle tremendously with that tank. And I think the key here is that in 2.5 seconds, you get 0.5 of a second less where the enemy can see you before you can get your shell off, like here. Now, each shell I fired there had a reload of 2.5 seconds, and you saw a shell come whizzing back. That's basically 2 lots of 0.5 in the gap. The first shell, then a 2.5 second reload, then the second shell, then a 2.5 second reload, and boom, then the third shell. I had to fire 3 shells to get a round that scored. If I was in the P44 Pantera, there would have been a full second extra where I was exposed to get that third shell off. And that guy who fired that last round as I pulled back would have been firing square into my tank. And that, for me, is the real key. That is the real key. That extra, like, there's a shell, there's another shell coming in now, and then that tank vanishes, and so my auto-aim doesn't work, and it goes into the edge of the building. The Pantera doesn't get that second shell because a full, doesn't. Okay. What I'm saying is that reloading faster for me is more important in an auto loader or a drum reload, an automatic reloader, than it is to actually have a higher DPM. Because when you're looking at these tanks, they're burst tanks. They're tanks where you have 3 in the clip, you're going to bang them out, 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to hide. That's really what you're looking at as an autoloader. Where this will struggle, this tank, which I think is completely reasonable, is in brawls and dogfights against other tanks. When you are just basically up against another tank that pushes into you and tries to hit point trade, your DPM is just god-awful. 2030 DPM in a Tier 8 tank is the kind of DPM you get on an IS series tank, like a big, derpy 120mm IS-6 or something like that. That's when you're going to be getting in real trouble. And I like that, because that means that there is a real benefit to running the Pantera, which has a slightly lower alpha, 225 versus 240, and yet has more pen, has a slightly longer area between shells, and it makes two tanks that are quite similar in their mechanic and there's that god-awful pen, like 180 millimeters just taking out a track, not enough to get through. So I like that they've balanced the tank in a reasonable fashion like that. You've got 2 Tier 8 auto reloaders where you're running a drum gun, and I like that, but they are different tanks, very different tanks for me, and I prefer this tank, and I actually won an awful lot in this tank. I just didn't manage to get big games in it. I did, however, have my mate Fizzy prep up a big game, a big 4.5k domination in the P46. So here we go. Let's roll that tape, Bushka, while I have a coffee. Thank you. Love that coffee. Got a stream to commentate later, so I'm trying to pump the coffee up and just lose my mind. There's the Fizzmeister General. Now, he is running the tank with a different camo scheme. Good on him. I mean, I ran a lot of games in it, but I just couldn't get big numbers. I won pretty much everything. And it was weird to have... Here's a funny thing about being a YouTuber. We all whinge and moan and bitch about people being really bad on our teams. But when you try to do big numbers, you need everyone else in your team to not be competent, or what ends up happening is they actually do damage and you just keep winning and doing 2k, 2.5k, and no one wants to watch that. They want big numbers, big juicy numbers at Helsing. If you just fire Helsing, there you go. Someone's fired something. Was it the Helsing? Fizzy's like, I think it was the Helsing, and the Helsing's not paying attention. So he's going to cop... Oh, sets him on fire. Lovely stuff. Now, this is the thing. I like the idea far more, and it suits my playstyle far more, of playing peekaboo, of ducking out and booming with 3 shells in 5 seconds, and doing that less often than ducking out and booming with 3 shells in 6 seconds. Now, the reload on the shells between the Pantera and the Progetto M46, and if it feels like I'm referencing the Pantera a lot, it's because it's obviously the only other thing to reference against this tank. It is not a system that's in the game apart from those 2 tanks, and it's because of that, I think you've got to really understand that this is almost like choosing a preference and a play style. I prefer this, and it's amazing to me that I can love this tank so much and yet really not love the way the Pantera rolls for me. I was never able to feel comfortable with that. But this, I'd put it on, it fit like a glove immediately. And I like the Fizzy is rolling away there. He's seeing that there's not a great opportunity there. The reloads, for instance, are 6.65 per second on your first shell on this, 4.88 seconds on your second shell, and then 4.88 seconds reload on your third shell. So it takes a long time to get those shells back. And the reloads on the Pantera are 6.65 on your first shell, 3.55 on your second, and 3.1 seconds on your third. So you can see that the numbers go down for the Pantera and they don't really go anywhere friendly on this thing. So you've got to be sure that when you're firing all 3 together as often as possible, and then kind of playing it more like a traditional autoloader, like that T69 there, where you wait for all 3 to go back up before you get involved. Because this has a traditional autoloader reload time between shells, 1 every 2.5 seconds. And that's really important. It's also got excellent speed. Its mobility is not as good as the Pantera's, but it's not far off. 55 kilometers an hour versus 60 kilometers an hour on the Pantera, and 22.22 power to weight ratio. Now, that is actually a really good power to weight ratio, despite it's not as good quite as good as the Panteras, it's still very bloody good. So all in all, it's a tank that I can highly recommend, and it's got a nuanced playstyle that is just a little bit different to the P44 Panteras playstyle. A big game there from Fizzy. Thanks very much for sending that along, mate. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I hope you are looking forward to a lot more content this year on the channel. I've got a real load of gears just lined up, some different sounding... I've got some interesting stuff coming up. So stick around, look after yourselves, tell your friends, get on, subscribe, love, and just all in all, enjoy. And until next time, stay safe on the battlefield. Bye for now.